In the United States. Let me bring in Congressman Will Hurd. He's a member of the House Homeland Security Committee. He also spent 9 years as a clandestine officer for the CIA. Congressman, thank you very much for joining me. Importantly, you were in a classified briefing last night. There, I was looking at the list. You guys were briefed by the head of DHS, the FBI, the Counterterrorism Center, and even more. Did they give you any sense of other attack operations like this one that we're talking about overnight with this raid, other attack operations in the pipeline, the scope of what you're looking at here?
Well, they were very clear. Secretary of DHS and Director Comey were very clear that they don't think there are any credible threats, current threats to the homeland. But what was interesting is that they showed that this evolving intelligence picture, getting information on the attackers that were killed. They're learning about their accomplices, and they're looking for folks all over Europe. And there's a lot of information exchange that's happening between the U.S. and our European partners, and that our law enforcement and intelligence agencies are taking that information and trying to look backwards to see if there's any other clues to potential future attacks.
Congressman, you talk about the evolving nature of the intelligence. I do want to get to that especially. But in this briefing, were you told or given any sense that on the U.S. side that they believe that the organizer of these attacks, Abdelhamid Abaoud, that he was in Paris? Because all of the information flow to this point was that he was not. Maybe he was in Iraq, maybe he was in Syria, and now this raid overnight was based on information that he could have been not only in France but in Paris.
There wasn't any conversation about the actual location of the mastermind behind these plots. I think the conventional wisdom is that he was somewhere in Syria and Iraq. But again, in a situation like this, it's constantly evolving, constantly changing. And if he is in Europe, the dragnet around him is going to definitely be tightening, which is a good thing to take a player like this off the battle space.
And Congressman, what does it say for the fact that all the conventional wisdom was that he was in Syria or in Iraq and that he moved into Paris, into France, undetected?
Well, we don't know if we can confirm that he actually has moved into Paris. I haven't seen that level of intelligence. And I think the important thing is looking at all this to figure out how we can use this in the future. One of the things that I set on the task force to look at the threat of ISIS to the homeland. And one of the things that was pretty shocking to me is the lack of information sharing amongst our European partners. We were sharing tens of thousands of names of known terrorists to them, and many of our European partners were not checking known travel against that information. I think Paris showed that this needs to change. I think the French changed after Charlie Hebdo, and I think our European colleagues have a long way to go to improve the amount of information sharing that should happen in order to keep Europeans safe and ultimately keep Americans safe as well.
It does seem that this has exposed that, among other things. Now, it's interesting that you point out that information sharing. We've heard from a couple other members of Congress over the past couple of days saying that 4 of Friday's attackers, that they were known to U.S. intelligence. From what you heard in this briefing and from your sources, do you get a sense that these 4 attackers that were known by U.S. intelligence, were they on U.S. watch lists that would have prevented them from flying into the United States?
I think that those individuals that are being identified have been on watch lists, and I'm pretty confident any new information that is gained from these investigations, those names are going to be immediately put on watch lists to prevent them from coming to the United States. This is something that's incredibly critical, and I've seen how information sharing within the U.S. intelligence community has changed from 2000, when I first joined the CIA, to when I left in 2009, and it's even changed significantly since I've been in Congress. So I think we can always be doing better. We should always be looking in ways to do better. But our level of information sharing is way more significantly interconnected in the United States than with our partners in Europe.
And real quick, Congressman, next week is one of the busiest travel years, if not the busiest travel week of the year. You say there's no credible threat right now that you're hearing from all of the intelligence heads that would know to the homeland. But what are we going to be seeing in terms of at U.S. airports? Are we going to see more security? What are you hearing?
We are, weeks ago, prior to these Paris attacks, Director Johnson has encouraged TSA to do additional screening, and not only at local airports, but at airports that feed from the Middle East into the United States. So they've taken additional measures. A lot of those measures haven't been publicized because we don't want the bad guys to know what's happening. But those kinds of things are happening every single day, and the men and women in law enforcement are looking to figure out how do we take the information we're learning from these existing attacks to continue to protect our homeland.
And not just learn, but learn fast, as we saw overnight, how quickly and how importantly that quick action is. Congressman, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. Let's get straight back to Paris.